Can you tell me what inspired you to create the Polymath Polycast?
I started it in order to highlight different multidisciplinary people's lives and be able to talk about how they manage all those various interests. I wanted to be able to interview various different individuals who have this multidisciplinary polymathic lifestyle and highlight that it's okay to be multidisciplinary.
That's a wonderful mission. How do you usually find and select guests who fit this multidisciplinary profile?
I find that each guest somehow often anchors to a certain term, whether it's polymath, jack of all trades, multi-potentialite, and they'll either have that in their social media bios or maybe on matchmaker.fm when I would find them on that platform. And so usually there's some sort of sign that they are multidisciplinary.
Once you've selected your guests, how do you prepare for the interviews to ensure you capture the full scope of their multidisciplinary experiences?
That's a great question. I tend to do a ton of research. I want to make sure I get a holistic understanding of their perspectives and their different careers and skills. And so I usually take in a swath of information, which is pretty polymathic in of itself. And so I'll go through all their different platforms and try to go through all their content if they are a creator and find out what makes them tick and find out what areas of interest they have. And so I'll try to consume their entire blog if I can, or try to read their book, whatever kind of content they've created.
That's a thorough approach. It must really help in capturing the nuances of each guest's journey. What do you find most rewarding about hosting these conversations?
I love seeing the light in their eyes whenever they feel seen. And so when I'm able to highlight that they are multidisciplinary, maybe even polymathic, and able to manage their lives pretty well, in a lot of cases they don't realize that they do, it is nice to see that they feel respected and understanding themselves more from the experience of being interviewed.
That sounds incredibly fulfilling. It's great that you can provide that kind of insight and validation for your guests. Do you have a favorite moment or a particularly memorable interview that stands out?
I think that overall, every interview's had some kind of interesting situations. One question I ask every guest is, what is a polymath to you? And in that question, people might answer some of the similar ideas, but the way they answer it is always different. And it always brings something unique to the table. And I think that's my favorite moment.
That sounds like a truly enriching experience. It's wonderful how you capture such unique insights through that question. Thank you for sharing all this. If there's anything else you'd like to add or discuss, feel free to let me know.
I want you to keep asking me questions about the Polymath Polycast.
Got it. How do you envision the future of the Polymath Polycast? And are there any new directions or topics you're planning to explore?
I actually am going to be taking a break from the show once this season is over, and when I come back, I'm hoping to be able to triple down on it. And speaking of tripling down, I have a new mini-series within it that we call the Triple Threat or the Triple Polycast, not sure on the name just yet. But the idea is to have two guests at the same time, allowing me to take multiple perspectives as a host and see how they combine together. They could have even a similar overlapping skill, but they have other skills that are completely different, and I want to see how they compare and contrast.
That sounds like an exciting new direction. The idea of bringing multiple guests together to explore overlapping and contrasting skills could offer some really unique conversations. What inspired you to take this approach with the miniseries?
I think that the first interview is about getting to know that person. Then I have them back on for a round two polycast, which allows them to see how has their life changed since the last time they came on. Sometimes it's been years, so there's often a lot of changes. And then in other cases, it's really interesting to see how they compare to other polymaths. And that's the whole point of that third series, is to be able to see how they compare and just what they agree on as well.
That's a thoughtful progression for your series. It must be fascinating to see how each guest's journey evolves. Do you have any specific goals for what you'd like your listeners to take away from this new miniseries?
I really want people to understand that no polymath is the same. Even if they have the similar mindset, like one is a ballerina and scientist and the other one's a ballerina and scientist, they could be two different types of ballerinas and two different types of scientists. And it's interesting to think about how even if you have the same area of knowledge, it may not be the same in practice.
That's a powerful message. Emphasizing the uniqueness of each polymath's journey will definitely resonate with your listeners. Are there any specific guests or topics you're particularly excited about for this upcoming miniseries?
Not in particular, but I think there's a lot of unique combination of guests that I'm excited about.
That sounds fantastic. It's going to be really interesting to hear those diverse perspectives. I'm sure your listeners will appreciate the fresh insights and comparisons.
Ask me the question I ask every guest: what is a polymath to you?
What a great question. So, what does a polymath mean to you?
It's weird to have that reverse back onto me. I think that a polymath is someone with three or more areas of expertise and insatiable curiosity. That's the basic answer. But I think the real answer is someone who can thrive in an adaptation in this digital renaissance. And how we become a polymath takes time. And people don't seem to understand that you can do it either serialized, one after the other, or in a juggling sense where you do many different things at once, or both. And that's where I see polymathy going forward, and what does it mean to me?
That's a thoughtful and comprehensive perspective. It's clear that you see polymathy as both a journey and a way to adapt to our ever changing world. Thanks for sharing your insights. If there's anything else you'd like to dive into or discuss, just let me know.
Can you ask me about my polymath integrated operating system?
Absolutely. Could you tell me more about your Polymath integrated operating system? What does it entail, and how does it help you manage your multidisciplinary interests?
I like that question. The PIOS, as I like to call it for short, is a modality for people who are polymathic or just interdisciplinary in general. You don't necessarily have to be at a polymath level to use it. In fact, I think even specialists could benefit from it as well. It is a knowledge management framework that takes based on these layers of the yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily with an archive at the end. And each of these layers have their own purpose, whether it is ikigai alignment, the four pillars philosophy, input and output, such as the modular degree and content production, and as well as journaling across all these different time levels as well. I found myself actually really benefiting from doing yearly notes, and I didn't necessarily anticipate that as much.
The Polymath integrated operating system sounds incredibly comprehensive and versatile. It's fascinating how you've structured it across different time layers and incorporated elements like ikigai and the four pillars philosophy. How did you come up with this system, and what inspired you to design it this way?
I came up with it because of a need for myself. I needed to be able to organize my own multidisciplinary life, and I knew that other people would need to as well. I use Obsidian as the main tool for it, but it can actually be adapted to pretty much any knowledge management tool in my experience. And I created this system because when I was looking at project management tools in the past, I was frustrated by the layers of abstraction that they would allow me to have, such as just simply projects and tasks, or tasks and subtasks. They would only give me two layers, and I wanted more. And so I moved on to like Notion and Obsidian that allowed me to create my own system with as many layers as I wanted, and I settled on six. And I actually used a scientific basis for the leveling prior to just simplifying it to just the time layers. But that system used to be the supra, meso, macro, I think pico, micro, and nano. And it was interesting how the system evolved over the years.
It's impressive how you've developed such a detailed and adaptable system from your own experiences and needs. The evolution from scientific leveling to practical time layers shows a lot of thought and flexibility. Have you found any particular strategies or features within PIOS that have been especially beneficial for you or others?
I created the modular degree first before the PIOS, and that was my do-it-yourself education system and framework. And I was able to start learning a lot more faster by having this tracking. And with the Obsidian tool that I use, I'm able to have everything local on my computer, which I think makes a big difference when it comes to longevity. And because some websites go down, so that means you'll lose access to those articles or courses. And so I wanted to make sure I never lost access to as much information as I possibly could. And who knows, this PIOS could be the first layer towards having your own personal assistant like Jarvis. So the conversation we're having right now is using ChatGPT, but imagine this, but with someone who actually knows all the different information that I have on my own system.
That's really forward-thinking. Creating a system that not only supports your learning, but also preserves access to knowledge is invaluable. The idea of using PIOS as a foundational layer for a personal assistant is fascinating. How do you see this evolving in the future? And are there any specific goals you have for the system going forward?
I see that it should be adaptable, hence the whole point of the modular degree. And so I think even the PIOS itself would be adaptable. I don't necessarily make some of the micro templates that you might need. I have a daily note template, for example, but for some of the other ones, like for the quarterly layer or even some of the habits and system trackers, I think that some people might have their own way of doing that. They might be using Habitica or some other habit tracking tool And so they don't need my template in order to do it. And I wanted to basically give them the holistic framework and let them choose what basic templates they need within those different layers.
That's a fantastic approach, providing a flexible framework that adapts to individual needs and preferences. It's clear you've put a lot of thought into making the PIOS as adaptable as possible. It's exciting to think about how people can tailor it to their unique workflows. Do you have any advice for someone just starting out with the PIOS?
It may seem overwhelming at first, but in reality, you're already doing a lot of this tracking anyways. You're going to be planning out your years ahead. You're going to try to plan out your weeks ahead when it comes to Sundays and the Mondays of the week. And the more you do it consistently, the more successful you're going to be. So this system is literally just a way for you to have a better tracking of what you're going to be doing. And that way, if you need to do daily notes, weekly notes, monthly notes, etc., you have a way to keep track of it all and a place to organize all the stuff you want to learn from. And if you're a content creator, a way to manage your content production. That's the point.
That's excellent advice. It's great that the PIOS can help streamline what many people are already doing. Consistency truly is key to making the most out of any system. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on this. If there's more you'd like to discuss or explore, just let me know.
I would like to finish off this podcast episode exploring the ideas of polymathy, the multidisciplinary spectrum that I created, and being multidisciplinary in general.
That sounds like a perfect way to wrap up the episode. Exploring these concepts will undoubtedly resonate with your audience and provide valuable insights. Thank you for sharing so much about your journey and the Polymath Polycast.
You didn't ask me any questions about those topics I just produced.
You're right. Let's dive into those topics. Could you share more about the multidisciplinary spectrum you've created and how it relates to polymathy?
Yes, the polymath, or actually the multidisciplinary spectrum, is a collection of terms that are people who are multidisciplinary, from the multipotentialite, jack of all trades, generalist, polymath, and even what I call the
I'm
universe.
sorry, but you've hit the monthly limit for advanced voice. You can switch to standard now to keep chatting.
Damn. Well, let me finish this. So, I believe that the multidisciplinary spectrum is a collection of terms that I help people guide along this journey of polymathy. And so you might start off at the multipotentialite and then lead into jack of all trades, generalist, and polymath, and lead into what I call the universalist polymath, a concept of Da Vinci level proportions. And so while being a regular polymath is something that's pretty achievable, being a universalist polymath is something you have to strive towards across your life. And I wanted to give people a spectrum of these terms so they can know where they can level up to next. It also includes the various factors of being specialist, bi-specialist, and tri-specialist, which then lead into polymathy. Or you can have a splinter off from the jack of all trades level and become a T-shaped person. So you have the jack of all trades with, as well as one specialty. And that's what leads into the expert generalist as well, someone who has a medium level in a lot of different areas, as well as one specialty. And then again leads into polymathy. All three branches fall into polymathy eventually. I think that most people, if they live long enough, end up becoming polymaths in general. And so that is the idea behind the multidisciplinary spectrum. When it comes to the idea of polymathy itself, I think it's something that most people can achieve in this digital renaissance if you are adapting to all these new skills that are coming out, such as using AI to make a podcast in this case. Then I think you'll be well on your way to becoming a journalist and then polymath. Thanks for listening, and thanks for having me on my own show, the Polymath Podcast.
It's been a pleasure discussing these topics with you.